All right, so for question number 1 here, I'm just going to put it over on another page just so we have it. So I got room to work. Computer's really slow today. Okay, so how much heat is needed to convert 400 grams of water, okay, into steam at 115? So first thing I do with any one of these questions is I just draw a rough sketch of the heating curve of water so that I can identify my starting and ending points and get my number of steps. All right, I'm starting with water at 3 degrees Celsius, so that's right here, okay, just above the freezing point, going to steam at 115, so it's just above the boiling point, okay, that's start and end. How many steps is that going to be? 3. This was an exam question before. Okay, so this is exactly the kind of thing that I would put on your unit exam and probably even your final exam. All right, so step 1 right here. I've got to heat the water from 3 to 100. Then I've got to boil the water in step 2, and then in step 3 I've got to heat the steam from 100 to 115 degrees Celsius. Okay, so those are my steps. All right, what formula am I going to use for step 1? E equals mc delta T. Okay, temperature is changing in step 1, so I've got to use the formula that calculates the change in kinetic thermal energy. All right, so our mass is 400 grams. It's liquid water, so we use the specific heat capacity of liquid water, 4.2 joules per gram degree Celsius, and we're going to change its temperature by 97 degrees Celsius from 3 to 100. Okay, everybody with me so far? Okay, don't be afraid to ask questions if I'm losing you. Sorry, forgot to start my calculator this morning. Okay, 400 times 4.2 times 97 degrees is 162,960 joules. Okay, so we got our energy for step 1. In step 2, how do I calculate the energy in step 2? There's no temperature change in step 2. What formula do I use there?
The latent heat evaporation one?
Right, the latent heat of vaporization one, okay? E equals m times LV. All right, that's what we use here. Okay, always on this flat step here, this is m times LV. Okay, and down here, it's m times LF. Everywhere else, it's mc delta T. Okay, that's just something you're going to have to remember. Okay, 400 grams times the latent heat of vaporization, which is 2,260 joules, which is in your digital workbook and the notes from yesterday as well. Okay, so punch that into my calculator, 400 times 2260, and we are looking at 904,000 joules. All right, and then in step 3, what formula am I going to use? M times something. C delta T, yeah. Okay, got a temperature change. I'm going from 100 to 115 here. Okay, so 400, okay, that's the mass of the water, times the heat capacity. What heat capacity do I use here? For steam, yeah. Okay, 2.02 times the change in temperature going from 100 to 115, okay, is 15 degrees. Right, and remember I said that's a very common mistake, okay, is getting the temperature changes wrong, right? We're only concerned with how much each step is changing the temperature, right? So it'd be very common for me to see people put in there 115, okay? I'm only changing it from 100 to 115, that's only 15 degrees, okay? So 400 times 2.02 times 15 degrees, right? 12,120 joules. Okay, what do I do with those 3 numbers? Add them up. When I add them up, I should get 1,079,080 joules. Okay. that one. Okay, I'm going to practice a few more of those here before I start biomes, because I kind of sensed yesterday, now that I can see your faces, that we were not terribly comfortable with this whole idea, okay, when we were working on it yesterday, okay, which is why I'm so glad I didn't teach it until you were actually here. Okay. All right, I want you guys to try 2 and 3 for sure. Number 2 has got a lot of steps. It's a long one. Give you a little bit of time on those two. Okay, if we draw our little heating curve diagram here, I'm starting with ice at minus 17. So way down here, going to steam at 100. That's right here. How many steps is that? 4 steps. Okay, I first have to heat the ice to 0. Second step is melt the ice. Third step is heat the water. Fourth step is evaporate the water. We're not going any further than that. We're only going to steam at 100 degrees. We're not heating the steam at all. Okay, so it's only 4 steps. All right, keep going on that one. Okay, to warm the 1.5 kilograms of ice. So first thing I got to do is make sure I got that mass in grams. That's 1,500 grams. And then I put in my steps. So in step 1, I'm heating the ice. So that's MC delta T from minus 17 to 0. So we've got 1,500 times the specific heat capacity of ice, 2.116, times the temperature change, which is 17 degrees. So 1,500 times 2.116 times 17. All right, so we're looking at 53,958 joules. Okay, so that's step 1. In step 2, I have to melt the ice. The formula for ice melting is E equals MLF. That'll be 1,500, because the mass doesn't change, times 333 joules per gram, the latent heat of fusion for water. Okay, so 1,500 times 1, 2, 3. Okay, 499,500 joules. Okay, in step 3, I got to heat the water. Whoop, not step 1. I already did step 1. Step 3, I've got to heat the water, okay, from 0 to 100 degrees. So I'm changing its temperature, so I use E equals MC delta T. 1,500 times the specific heat capacity of liquid water this time, 4.2, right, times 100 degrees. Okay, 630,000 joules. All right, and then last step, I have to evaporate that water, and that's where we stop. So we have steam at 100 degrees Celsius. So, okay, to calculate the energy involved in evaporating water, we use E equals MLV. All right, so that's going to be 1,500 times 2,260 joules. 1,500 times 2,260 gives us 3,390,000 joules. Okay, we add all of those together and we should get 4,573,458 joules. Okay, everybody all right with that? Right. I mean, that's 1.5 liters of water. Right, so a block of ice at minus 17, fresh out of the freezer, okay, that's 1.5 liters worth of liquid water frozen. Okay, that would take a lot of energy to vaporize that. All right, feeling a little better about this? It's pretty patterned, okay, as long as you can identify the steps. The math isn't too challenging, it's just a matter of plugging numbers in, using the right numbers. All right, I will give you a couple more minutes to finish up number 3. Okay, and then we'll call it good on that stuff and move on to biomes. Okay, let's have a look at this one. So we're looking for how many joules are released this time, because we're cooling this, okay? Because this works in reverse as well. Instead of being added. This is the heat that's being released, right? So we've got steam at 135, so way up here, cooled to water at 12, so somewhere like there. So how many steps is that? 3. Also a former exam question. Okay, so 3 steps seems to be the pattern. Okay, so step 1, step 2, step 3. Okay, in step 1, we're cooling the steam from 135 to 100, so that'll be E equals MC delta T. Okay, that'll be our 250 grams times 2.02, the heat capacity of steam, times 35 degrees. Okay, and then in step 2, right, we're looking at condensing the steam, so that's still E equals MLV, it's just going in reverse. Okay, so we've got our 250 grams times 2,260, and then in step 3, we're cooling the water. Right, so that's E equals MC delta T. Okay, again, 250 grams times now the heat capacity of water times 88 degrees, because we're going from 100 to 12. Right, so do those 3 steps and we should get 675,075. All right, everybody good with that? Okay. So, I was thinking about your final exam and unit exam situations here, and I know you guys are probably getting kind of stressed because it seems like you've got a lot of tests coming up in a short period of time. There isn't anything I can do about that. That's the truth. You do have a lot of tests coming up in a short period of time. But I was thinking about it, and I thought maybe I would do this. On your final exam, okay, now that we've reduced it to 10%, I will do this. If you do better on your final exam than your lowest unit exam, I will replace the unit exam with that mark. Okay, so if you get, let's say, 85 on the final, right, and your lowest unit exam mark was 80, your lowest unit exam mark is now 85. Okay, I will replace it with your final exam mark if you do better on your final exam than you do on your worst unit exam. Okay? Sound fair? I think it's fair. It's a little more work for me to look it all up. Whatever. Okay? So we'll do it. We'll do it that way. Okay? So a little more incentive in case, you were thinking, it's only 10%, I don't need to study for that. Yeah, you do. Okay? Now there's a little more incentive, okay, to do well on that one. Okay.
What happens if it's not?
If it's not,
Yeah.
then nothing happens.
Oh,
Yeah, it just counts as your final exam and that's it.
okay.
Okay, if it ends, so it's basically you can't lose, right? If you don't do better than your worst unit exam, then it just counts as your final. Okay, if you do better, it's good. And I mean, some of us had one unit exam that was kind of a brain fart or whatever, and it just didn't work out. This is a chance to do something about it. So. Okay. All right, moving on here to the last thing in this course, essentially. Little tiny thing, but this is effectively it. Okay, we got to talk about all the biomes in the world. Now, the way that biomes work is this. Biomes are ecological regions on Earth that exist in their given positions because of factors affecting climate. Okay, so biomes is going to relate back quite a bit to climate, which is why on your unit and final exams, you will have a written response question that will have a climatogram, and it will ask you what biome it comes from. Okay, so you'll have to look at the climatogram and go, okay, so, well, the temperature is like pretty flat, so it's probably near the equator because the temperature is not changing, and the rainfall is super high, so it's probably a tropical rainforest. Okay, something like that. Okay, it would be something that's fairly straightforward. Right? It'll be, the climatogram will be easy to read. You'll definitely be able to tell kind of where it would belong. Okay. All right, so you'll have to do that. That's point number 2. That's okay. And the other thing is be able to identify a biome from either a picture or a description of its characteristics. We're talking multiple choice questions there. Okay, I would put a picture of a biome and a description of it. Talking about these are equatorial. This is an equatorial biome. All the trees are really, really big, and the vegetation's really lush, and there's really high rainfall, and whatever, and you would say, oh, tropical rainforest. Okay, you definitely wouldn't say Arctic tundra. Okay, if you did, I don't know what you're thinking. Okay, all right, so that's what you'd be asked to do. Those two things, okay, with the information that's in here. Now, this is a longer lesson with a lot of me talking. We won't finish it today. We'll have to finish it on Thursday. Okay, but it's basically just recall. Okay, you have to know the characteristics of each biome, be able to recognize them, and obviously put them with the climatogram. All right, so the world is broken up into these different ecological regions. Okay, we call those ecological regions biomes. All right, so we'll start with the tropical rainforest, which you can see in this kind of light green color. All right, so tropical rainforests exist obviously only in the tropics, hence their name. All right, there are no tropical rainforests outside of the Tropic of Capricorn and the Tropic of Cancer, which are incidentally 23.5 degrees north and south of the equator. Okay, they essentially mark the region of Earth where sunlight does not change as a result of the Earth's tilting back and forth. Okay, coincidentally, the Earth's tilt is 23.5 degrees, which is why between those two numbers, okay, you don't essentially get any difference in intensity of sunlight throughout the year. So there's effectively no seasonality, right, other than maybe rainy and dry. So all of the tropical rainforests exist within those latitudes. Okay, I mean within tiny little bit sticking up here. All right, so most of the tropical rainforest equatorial. Okay, and you see a lot of it here in Southeast Asia and the South Pacific. So this is like Papua New Guinea and places like that. Okay, and then obviously quite a bit here in South America. This would be the Amazon rainforest. Okay, and then you've got some a little bit here in the Horn of Africa. Okay, Madagascar's got a little bit. Okay, places like that. Right, so you got tropical rainforest in those places. Okay, rich, lush, thick forest. Okay. Next one, savanna. So this kind of light brown color. Okay, the savanna also is a tropical climate, right, or a tropical biome. Sorry, it only exists really within those areas. A little bit sticks out here or there because it isn't a forest. It's a tropical grassland. Okay, so it's if you picture where elephants and giraffes and stuff live, that's the savanna. Okay, so the outback of Africa, okay, would be what you would typically associate with savanna. Okay, and the savanna is going to get lots of rain, almost as much rain as the tropical rainforest. The reason you don't get a forest is because the rain isn't even. Okay, a savanna has a monsoon season, where you get several months where it just pours rain every day. Okay, and when I mean pours, I really mean that. They measure rainfall in meters per month. Okay, so it just dumps, and then it doesn't rain again for 6 months. Okay, so there's a monsoon season, and then there's a definite dry season. Tall tropical rainforest vegetation is not going to survive 6 months without rain. Okay, so what you get instead is a tropical grassland, okay, which looks a lot different. Okay, then you got the desert. Okay, there's different kinds of desert. Okay, there's equatorial deserts like the Sahara. Okay, and then there's like Arctic deserts and high mountain deserts and things like that. Rain shadow deserts. Deserts can exist anywhere. Okay, but what they all have in common is that they're all very what? Dry. Okay, but they can exist in a lot of different places. Okay, obviously, okay, North Africa, so that would be like Tunisia, Morocco, places like that. Okay, they're desert. All right, the whole Middle East. Okay, Jordan, Iran, Iraq, Kuwait, all Saudi Arabia, all of that's all desert. Okay, hot equatorial desert. Okay, the shifting sands and things like that you've seen Star Wars, Tatooine. Okay, that's filmed in Tunisia. Okay, right here. Okay, so that's definitely in the most desert kind of place in the world, right? And then you see kind of pockets of desert in other places, okay? In fact, this desert right here, okay, is the Gobi Desert, right? And this thing that you see the white stripe through with the light blue, that's the Himalayas, okay? So that'd be like Mount Everest and all those really, really tall mountains. So this desert, the Gobi Desert, is a rain shadow, okay? Clouds cannot get over the mountains here, and so there's low precipitation behind the mountains, similar to what you see here where we live. Okay, you got the Rocky Mountains and you got prairie behind it. Okay, not desert so much, but prairie. Okay, and then also in the outback of Australia, okay, you don't get a lot of precipitation moving into the middle of the continent, so it's very dry there, and you got little bits of desert here and there throughout the rest of the world, but it's not totally an equatorial climate. There's desert, okay, beyond the range of the equator. All right, extreme desert is a biome in and of itself. Rocks, ice. Antarctica is entirely an Arctic desert. Okay, it's nothing but rocks and ice. There's basically no plants living there. Okay, and thus, other than penguins, no animals living there either. All right. So you see that on the tops of all high mountain ranges where there would be glaciers. Okay, Greenland is obviously all extreme desert as well. Okay, nothing but rocks and ice. Okay, chaparral, also sometimes called the Mediterranean climate. I can't imagine why. Okay, so if you've been to Greece or Italy or places like that, okay, that's all Mediterranean climate or chaparral. So it can be quite hot. It's a bit dry. You get vegetation like olives and things like that, and like oak and things that are a bit more drought tolerant. Okay, but high humidity and high heat. Okay, throughout, especially the summer, but most of the year also pretty temperate. Okay, you get a little bit here in kind of Southern California and Mexicali, kind of that area. Okay, and a little bit here. Was it Cuba or Trinidad and Tobago, somewhere in there? Okay, that area, Caribbean. Okay, but yeah, and a tiny bit here at the tip of Africa, a tiny bit at the tip of Australia there. Okay, but mostly it's around the Mediterranean. Okay, temperate grassland. We call that prairie. Okay, in Asia they call it steppe. Okay, but it's prairie, it's grassland. Okay, obviously most of the Midwestern kind of central United States is prairie. Okay, all the prairie provinces, obviously prairie. Okay, and much of Asia, okay, is also prairie. Lots of grassland. Okay, really important for agriculture. There's a bit there in Australia as well. Some in South America. They'd be a little bit more tropical looking. Okay, some down even into Mexico. Okay, temperate deciduous forest. What does deciduous mean?
The trees lose their leaves during the winter.
Exactly. Okay, the plants shed their leaves each season or each winter. And so, yes, obviously most of the eastern United States, and much of central Canada is deciduous forest. So maple and oak and things like that, would be living in those kind of places. Okay, most of Europe, at least before the Industrial Revolution, would have been temperate deciduous forest. Okay, and then obviously some places, obviously in Asia, and like Japan and Korea and places like that would be there. Okay. The taiga is coniferous forest. So if you've been to Banff, you've been in the taiga. That's Arctic, or sorry, not Arctic, that's Alpine taiga. If you've been north of Fort McMurray, you're in Arctic taiga, right? So there's two different things. It's caused by temperature, okay? But you can get taiga at lower latitudes as long as it's at a high altitude, right? So it's entirely caused by temperature, okay? It's a very cold biome, okay? And winters can be really, really cold, but summers can be comparatively quite hot. Okay, so the plants that live here have to really be able to deal with kind of a seesawing effect or a roller coaster effect of temperature, that goes on. Very, very severe seasonality for that biome. And then you got the tundra. Okay, there's again Arctic and alpine tundra. If you get above the tree line, okay, so if you go hiking or mountain climbing, you get above the tree line, you're now in the Arctic tundra. Okay, and that's basically an Arctic grassland. Okay, it's too cold for trees to grow. Okay, the tree line is determined by temperature. Okay, in fact, when you get up to here, there's a tree line that's just not on the mountains. It looks kind of weird, but you hit a tree line in terms of latitude, okay, as well as altitude. Okay, so above that you'd have tundra. Okay. All right, everybody okay with where those all are? All right, so we're going to go into detail about each one here. So you probably want to underline in the notes or highlight in the notes or something. Okay, just some of the important stuff here. All right. How many people have ever been somewhere where you were in the tropical rainforest? Okay, if you've been to like parts of Mexico, it would be kind of like tropical rainforest. If you've been to Hawaii, okay, Hawaii's kind of weird. One side of the island is a blasted desert, and the other side is a tropical rainforest due to the rain shadow effect of the big volcanoes. Okay, but if you go there, you can be in the tropical rainforest, and then 5 minutes later you're in this blasted desert. Okay, but it's definitely tropical rainforest. It's thick. Okay, it's not at all like a forest we have here. Okay, you go in the forest here and you can see between the trees and you can walk and you can find paths. If you go into the tropical rainforest, it just closes in. If you're claustrophobic, would not be fun. Okay, so you really feel closed in the tropical rainforest. The vegetation is so thick that there's actually layers of it. Okay, as you go from ground level to the top, we call the top layer the canopy. okay? 'Cause it really effectively is like that. It just seals everything out. Okay. All right. So the general characteristics of the tropical rainforest. Okay. Don't worry about percentages, and that number's gone down because there's unfortunately a lot of environmental disturbance in the tropical rainforest. But around 10 to 13% of the Earth's land surface. They're complex and they're variable forests, and they grow in areas with no distinct seasonality. So if we're looking at a climatogram, okay, here's what we see. The temperature line is pretty flat. Okay, always indicative of being near the equator because the amount of sunshine doesn't change. Okay, and we see very constant precipitation. Right, so this is precipitation in millimeters. So their driest month is 15 centimeters of rain. Okay, their wettest month is over 20 centimeters of rain. Right, and that's every month. So it's a very, very wet climate. Okay, so everything in a tropical rainforest is pretty uniform. Precipitation is pretty uniform, temperature is pretty uniform, so that's definitely something to look for on your test when I give you a picture of a climatogram. Okay, if you see something like that, it's equatorial and wet. Okay. All right, so high temperatures, high rainfall, high humidity, okay, dominate the climate of the tropical rainforest. Precipitation exceeds evaporation. More rain falls that can actually evaporate. Right? That leads to flooding. Tropical rainforests are often flooded for months of the year. Okay? So plants have to be adapted to actually having their roots submerged for long periods of time. Okay? Our plants cannot survive that. Okay? If plants around here have their roots submerged for more than a week, they'll die. Okay? You see, like in 2013, okay, when we had our big floods, okay, a lot of the vegetation along the river that didn't get just wiped right out died because it was underwater for too long and the roots suffocated. Okay, so you got thick, luxuriant vegetation, okay, is also going to be kind of a key thing for the tropical rainforest, okay. And you can see here, guys, that like these are pictures from Hawaii on the kind of tropical side, and you can see that their mountains look a lot different than our mountains, okay. Our mountains, and you got trees, and then the trees just end, okay. Here the mountains look like a chia pet, okay. Stuff can grow on the most sheer faces because there's so much rain. Okay? Here, the sheer faces, they dry out really quickly, okay? And so nothing can grow there. But here, like in this spire of rock is covered in plants. Okay? It's just straight up and down. The plants can get a foothold because it's always wet. Okay, soils, okay, they're very weathered. And what I mean by weathered is they get washed away a lot because of all the rainfall, all the flooding and things like that. So you see that they have kind of a pale reddish or pale brown color to them, right? And that's because water sits on top of them and a process called leaching occurs, right? It's exactly like it sounds, okay? A leach sucks stuff out of you. Well, leaching sucks the nutrients out of the soil. If water sits on top of the soil, okay, the soil underneath it will become saturated, and then diffusion will occur. All the stuff, all the minerals and nutrients dissolved in the soil will move from where they're in high concentration in the saturated soil into the flood water that's slowly trickling by, okay, and it will remove it all. Okay, so it'll suck the nutrients out of the soil and carry it away somewhere else. Right? That means that this soil is terrible for farming. Okay? Which is odd, because you'd think, wow, well, how does a big thick forest grow here? Well, the trees and the plants that grow there are actually able to pull their nutrients directly out of the floodwater. Not the soil is only really there to anchor them. Okay? So farming this soil is ineffective for two reasons. It floods all the time, so unless you're growing rice, okay, which can be flooded and survive, okay, you're not going to have a lot of luck. But also because the soil is so poor. Okay? And a lot of the people who live in places like this, they have to sustain themselves, and they do what's called slash and burn agriculture. So they cut down the forest, okay? They grow a crop, and then the next year the soil fails. And they have to go slash and burn another area. Okay? And it's not that they don't realize what they're doing, it's just the only way they can eat. Okay? And so that results in a lot of environmental degradation because the soil is just not good for growing food. All right, decomposition is so rapid, okay, that soils rarely develop an organic surface layer. So decomposition is rapid, okay, that's a key point as well. It's hot and it's wet, okay, things are going to break down and decompose very, very quickly. All right. Okay, the soil in a tropical rainforest has a weird profile. It's nothing like ours is. Okay, and we talked about the A horizon, the B horizon, the C horizon the other day. Okay, the A horizon in the tropical rainforest is practically absent. There's almost no topsoil because it always gets washed away. There's a thick B horizon, which is all clay because the clay will settle and cement itself together, and then underneath that will be the parent material, okay, like bedrock. Okay. All right, for vegetation, okay, the vegetation is extremely diverse, okay, both in composition and structure. There can be up to 8 different layers of vegetation from the ground to the tops of the highest trees, and there can be up to 100 different tree types per hectare. Okay, a hectare is 100 meters by 100 meters, so roughly the area enclosed by the running track. Okay, so a football field is roughly a hectare. Okay. In a forest in Canada, you'd be lucky if you had a few hundred trees, period, in that area. Okay? In a rainforest, there could be 100 different species of trees in that area, and thousands of individual trees in that area. Okay? So not just 100 trees, 100 different species of tree in an area like that. So very, very diverse. You go into a forest in Canada and you've got, okay, there's Douglas fir, and lodgepole pine, and white spruce. And that's it. Okay? Or you go into, you know, a forest in central Canada and you'll have oak and maple and hickory and maybe some beech, and that's it. Okay? There's not a lot of diversity. There's like 4 or 5 different species, and that's it. You go to the tropical rainforest, hundreds of different kinds. All right, and you can see that the vegetation is dense. Okay? This is a picture at ground level. This is why you don't go into the jungle without a machete. Okay? It's not that you're worried about zombies. Okay? You gotta have a machete to get through and to find your way back. Right? If you walk into this and you just kind of part the plants and walk in, you will be turned around and lost in no time. You can't see the sun. Okay? You can't look up and go, okay, well there's the sun, so that's west and this is east. It's the canopy just closes everything in. Okay? And it's really, really easy to get lost. Take it from me, I know, because my father and I went on a little hike in the rainforest in Hawaii, and that happened to us. If it hadn't been just a stroke of luck that we could hear cars, okay, and follow the sound of the cars, we would have been hopelessly lost. Okay? Because we went in there like, you know, dumb Canadians who go into a forest and go, well, I can see for miles. Okay? There's spaces between the trees. Okay? It's not like that at all. It just closes in behind you. There's, you know, it's hard to recognize anything because there's so much stuff to look at, okay? And it's really, really easy to get lost. So really thick vegetation everywhere. All right, and that vegetation has to be flood tolerant. And I've shown you this picture before, okay? But these are the roots of these trees, okay? And then they have these special snorkel roots that allow them to get oxygen from the air, okay, above the water line during flooding. All right. Okay, for the animals, okay, that's what fauna is. Okay, there's lots of different types of animals in the rainforest, but you're not going to find really big animals in general in the rainforest. Okay, the whole idea that the lion is the king of the jungle is really ridiculous. Lions don't live in the jungle. Okay, small things live in the jungle, and things that have to live on the ground don't do well in the jungle because it's flooded a lot of the time. So most of your animals are insects, and the other ones are arboreal, okay, which means they live in the trees. Okay, so lots of your animals are arboreal, and most of them are bugs, reptiles, and amphibians. Okay, more amphibians than reptiles. Okay, your mammals are all going to be rodents, and they're all basically going to live in the trees. Okay, even the tree sloth. Okay, the 3-toed sloth. Okay, slowest land mammal. Okay, it is not designed to walk on the ground. Okay? In fact, if you look at its musculature, look at its back. Okay? Its back is the most muscular part of it. Right? Its shoulders and chest, look how skinny its arms are. It's not designed to hold its weight above its arms. It's designed to hang its weight from its arms, okay, and kind of shuffle along tree branches. Okay? You put a sloth on the ground and it crawls. Okay? That's all it can do. Okay? So they're pretty quick through the trees, okay, but not so quick on the ground. Okay? You got big things like dung beetles, okay, whose name is very apropos because they make big balls of dung to impress their mates. Be thankful you're not a dung beetle. Here's a present, honey. It's a big ball of poop. Okay? Yeah, so luckily we don't do that. Well, most people probably wouldn't do that. Be really weird. Okay, you got like little red panda. Okay, so little rodents. Okay, it's pretty cute. Okay, lots of different frogs. Lots of things in the rainforest are venomous. Okay, like certain species of frogs will have neurotoxins on their skin. Okay, that keeps them from being eaten. Right, and then obviously people can use that as like poison on blow darts and things like that for hunting. And then you got big bugs. Bugs of all kinds. If you don't like bugs, don't go to the rainforest. There's lots of them and they're big. Okay? Like, you know, the praying mantis or the walking stick. That's this. Okay? They can be like this long. Right? And they look just like a stick. If you have one hanging on your arm and you blow on it, it just goes like it's in the wind. And it looks just like a branch. It's crazy.
So if the venom that these animals have in the rainforest is so useful to them, why is it typically only, like, why is venom usually not really secluded but most commonly found in these types of rainforests?
It's not that it can't be found elsewhere. It's just more common there.
Yeah, I know, but I was wondering if there's a specific reason.
Not that I can think of. Their predators are going to be smaller, right? So, because there's nothing really big, but why? I couldn't tell you. It's just like amphibians and reptiles tend to be the animals that have venom more than anything else. There tends to be more reptiles than amphibians, so maybe that's why. I couldn't tell you for sure. And insects, obviously. Insects are venomous as well, lots of them. Right? We just don't have as many of those species here because it's cold, right? So we have a couple species of venomous spider, a couple of species of venomous snake, and that's really it. All right, so that's for the animals, and then chemical cycling. Okay, so how quickly things are basically recycled, right, is incredibly fast. It's hot, it's wet. Okay, so bacteria can grow, fungi can grow. Okay, and those are the two things that, and there's lots of insects. Okay, so those are the things that can really get things decomposing quickly. And there's no break, right? Like here in Canada, things take forever to decompose because for 8 months of the year, they're frozen, okay? No decomposition is going on during that time, so it takes a lot longer, okay? Whereas in the rainforest, it's constant. All right, next one is the savanna, okay? Again, don't worry about the percentage there, okay? So there's lots of subtropical regions fringing on the rainforest, so they tend to border the rainforests, okay? It's typically a grassland biome, but it's a tropical grassland or an equatorial grassland, okay? The savanna can be open woodland in many cases, so there can be, you know, little bits of forest here and there, okay? But they vary widely. Right? And the trees are highly adapted to long periods of drought. In fact, if you look at all the trees, they tend to have this kind of umbrella shape. Okay, these trees in this picture also have that umbrella shape, and they do that because they are shading their roots. Okay, they grow not so much up, but more out, and then they can shade their roots for during the dry season. The soil around their roots can retain the moisture for longer. Okay, one thing you do see in the savanna: bigger animals. Not as many different kinds of animals as in the rainforest. The food chains are really short, okay, but the animals are much bigger because there's lots of grass. So that supports large populations of large herbivores, which then supports large populations of large predators. All right, so in the rainforest, the food chains would be really long. So you'd have like this plant that's eaten by this bug that eats that bug, this bug that eats that bug, and bug, and bug, and bug, 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 okay, until you get to like the frog that eats that bug, and then the bird that eats that frog. Okay, like they're gonna have a really, really long food chain. Whereas here in the savanna, you're gonna have the wildebeest and the lion, and that's it. Okay, then it ends. So the bigger your animals, typically the shorter your food chains are. Okay, so climate, once again, looking at a climatogram, this is an equatorial climate. What do we notice about the temperature line? It's flat, okay? If we don't see a curve, it's near the equator. If we see a curve, then we're starting to move into mid-latitudes, okay? If we see the curve, what we want to do is look at the curve and see where it is, okay? Is the curve above freezing or is the curve below freezing? That's what can tell us where the latitude is, okay? This tells us the latitude is tropical, okay? It's near the equator. All right, and as I was saying to you before, there's a monsoon season and then a dry season in the savanna. And you can see the rainfall's not the same pattern as it is for the rainforest. We've got some months where they get 350 millimeters of rain. Okay, And then there's months where they get 15 millimeters of rain. Okay, so there's a definite monsoon season, that's when the rains happen, and definite dry season after that. Okay, because of that big dry season, wildfires are very prevalent in the savanna. Okay, and lots of the plants are fire resistant. Okay, as a result. Okay, so because there's a distinct dry season, okay, so we got distinct dry season in terms of climate, okay, plants will go dormant, okay, not because it gets cold, but because it gets dry, okay, and, sorry, so we don't need to worry about the plagioclimax part here, okay, human-induced wildfires, okay, that can be a big one, okay, played a major development. Now, something else that there's a lot of in the savanna is bugs, okay? Equatorial is just generally associated with lots of bugs. What's this thing that cheetah's sitting on? It's a termite mound. Yeah, okay. Termites are like in the ant family, basically. It's a big ant hill, but it's a termite mound instead, okay? And that termite mound is basically made of sawdust, okay? Termites eat plant material, and they go crazy on it. We don't worry about termites up here because it's too cold for termites, but in tropical climates, they're a big worry because they can literally eat a house, okay, until it collapses, right? They get into the framing, they get into the wood of the house, the part, you know, that you see when they're building a house, and that house will fall down, right? Because they will literally chew it to sawdust, okay? So what you see here is basically a whole bunch of termite poop. Okay, they make a big mound out of it, okay, and then inside is the colony, just like with ants. There'd be a queen or several queens inside laying the eggs and whatever. Okay, but termites are so prevalent in the savanna that it's actually hard for plants to seed themselves because the termites will eat all the seeds. Okay, and the seeds don't get eaten. A lot of them get burned, okay, in the fires that happen very regularly. So it's actually quite difficult for plants to seed themselves in the savanna. Okay. All right, so vegetation, lots of the trees in the savanna are fire resistant, okay? So the action of fire and lots of termites, seeds barely ever survive, okay? So in response, trees produce enormous numbers of seeds per year, okay? Lots of the savanna trees are xerophytes, that means they're drought tolerant, okay? Lots of physical resistance to water loss, okay? They have like widespread deep roots, okay? Flattened crowns, we talked about that as well. Some will shed their leaves during the dry season, okay? But savanna trees rarely get very tall. And in fact, they can be overtopped by grasses, as you can see in the picture on the right, okay? I had a student from South Africa, like 10 or 12 years ago, okay? And when I taught this lesson, he's like, oh yeah, you wouldn't believe it. There's this stuff called elephant grass. And like our summer house, when we go to our summer house, we can't see it, the house, because the elephant grass grows taller than the house. So we have to go in with like a scythe, okay, and actually cut down the elephant grass so that we can get to the house. It just overgrows the house through the winter. Okay, well, not winter, but there's some, he called it their summer house. Obviously, they don't have summer and winter, but okay. And then he actually sent me this picture. Can you see the house? I can't either, but it's there, or so he tells me. Okay, but he said, yeah, this is our summer house, and like it's crazy. This stuff is called elephant grass because a herd of elephants can walk through it and be invisible. Okay? It's that tall, right? Now that also represents a lot of food energy. So when you got plants that are growing like that, there's a lot of grass for zebras, giraffes, and elephants and stuff. That's why you can get these huge herbivores. There's just food everywhere, okay, for them to eat. All right, so that is kind of a strange thing, but it's true. Okay, the elephant grass is actually kind of in the bamboo family, which is why it can grow so tall and so fast. All right, and then soils, you got really thick topsoil in the savanna, so kind of opposite of the tropical rainforest. There's not the kind of constant flooding and constant saturation, and because of all the grass, okay, the grass builds up thick topsoils fairly quickly. Right, so you got really, really thick, that's 3 foot thick topsoil. Okay, there. All right, for the animals, okay, animal diversity is low, opposite of the tropical rainforest where animal diversity is high, okay? Large populations of the species are present can be found, so big, huge herds of wildebeests and elephants and stuff like that, okay? There's lots of competition between all the herbivores for the food, okay? But not so much with the predators. I mean, sure, there's lots of different predators too. You got lions and tigers, but not bears, okay? And cheetahs and hyenas and stuff like that, okay? All of them are predators, some of them more scavengers, okay, that are gonna be present there, okay? All right. And then chemical cycling, that happens pretty fast. Okay, again, it's an equatorial climate. Even though they have a dry season, they got lots of bugs, okay, lots of termites. Termites help to cycle nutrients very quickly. All right, and you can see here again, we were talking about how all the trees can have that same shape. Okay, they're all crowned like that, which shades their roots. Okay, it also means that unless you're a giraffe, you're not going to eat them. Okay, because they're too tall for most of the animals to reach the leaves. All right, deserts are our next one. And as we said, yeah, lots of different kinds of deserts. You can have your equatorial shifting sands desert like the Sahara. You can have an equatorial rocky desert. Okay, you can have a mid-latitude desert, which would be like Arizona. Okay, and you can have a high latitude or high altitude desert like the Gobi Desert. Okay, that's going to actually have winters and have cold periods. Okay, so not all deserts are hot all year. Okay, some deserts are cold. Okay, for much of the year. Right? In fact, in Flagstaff, Arizona, there's a ski hill. Right? They have a definite winter there.
What would like Kananaskis count as?
Kananaskis is taiga.
Oh.
Yeah. Okay. And then, yeah, the foothills would be kind of the transition between prairie and taiga. All right. So there's lots of desert, okay, on Earth here. Okay, climate, okay, dry, okay. Obviously, that's going to be your key word. Okay, climate is going to be very dry. Okay, the evaporation exceeds the rainfall. Okay, so if you have a hot desert, the climatogram would be fairly flat temperature-wise. Okay, and obviously the precipitation bars are going to be minimal. Right, there's not going to be much there. If you had a more high latitude desert, then you would have more of a curve. Okay, but you'd still have your low precipitation. Okay, so what you're looking for a desert on a climatogram is just really low precipitation bars. Okay, it could have a flat line or it could have a curve, depending on what part of the earth it's on. Okay. All right. Now, does a desert not have any plants? No. Okay, lots of deserts actually do have plants. Okay, you go to Arizona, sure, lots of it is rocky and whatever, but there's also a fair number of plants, mesquite bushes, grasses, and saguaro cacti and things like that. Okay, are all going to be present in the desert. Okay, I mean, this desert here, there's a fair amount of stuff growing. It's not everywhere. It's not like the rainforest where they're growing on top of each other. They are going to space themselves because they have to compete for water, right? But there's still going to be a fair amount of stuff growing, okay? And the saguaro cactus is another one, okay? If you ever see a saguaro that's got lots of arms, it's very old, okay? They have to be about 80 to 100 years old before they grow their first arm. Right? So if you see one that's got lots of arms, it's pretty old. All right, so desert vegetation, short grasses. You're not going to get tall grasses. You can get lots of like succulents and things like that that are going to be very drought tolerant. And soils, you're basically going to have no topsoil in the desert. Right? There's not enough organic material around to build up a soil, and anything that is there is going to dry up and blow away. Right? There's not enough precipitation to kind of hold it. So you got basically no topsoil, and you got kind of a rocky B horizon, so clay and rocks together, and then usually your parent material is fairly broken. All right. For the fauna, animals that live in the desert are generally small, camels being an exception. Okay, but most animals that live in the desert are going to be small because it's hard to live in the desert given the lack of water. Okay, the larger you are, the more surface area you have for evaporation and energy capture. Okay, and so it's hard to survive those desert conditions. So you generally don't get large mammals. Okay, and you definitely don't get any mammals who are going to use sweat to cool themselves. Okay, sweating in the desert is death. All right. If you sweat, you're going to lose moisture too quickly and you'll die of dehydration. Okay, so typically animals that live in the desert are going to be smaller, nocturnal, okay, to stay in the cooler parts of the day, or have some other adaptation to conserving water. Right. If you're looking at like, a fox, maybe foxes will pant just like your dog pants. Okay, that's how they cool themselves without sweating. Okay, so they don't sweat like we do. I mean, they sweat a little bit, but mostly they cool themselves by evaporating moisture from their respiratory tract right near their carotid artery, which is the one that carries blood to your brain. So you're cooling the blood in there, and your brain is always getting cooler blood. Okay, so that's how the kind of panting works. Okay, for like rabbits and stuff like that, you can actually see the blood vessels in the ear here. Okay, that's actually a way that they cool themselves. Right, so they'll send blood to the ears, okay, which are shaded from the sun, and they can flap them to cool them a little bit. Okay, and that can help keep them cool. And they typically don't come out too much during the day. Okay, and then you got lots of bugs and lizards. Okay, so lots of reptiles. Reptiles, they don't really regulate their body temperature, so they'll come out in the morning and sun themselves, and then they can kind of tolerate the heat. They don't sweat, so they don't lose moisture that way. Okay, so they're more tolerant to that. And then obviously bugs. Okay, scorpions, okay, tarantulas and stuff like that are very well adapted to the dry desert conditions. Okay, and then you're gonna have birds of prey as well. So you have hawks and eagles and buzzards sometimes. Okay, chemical cycling, not much. Okay, typically something dies and it just desiccates. Okay, that means it just dries out completely and doesn't really break down. You need moisture to break things down. Okay, you're not gonna have like fungi growing because there's no moisture. There's not gonna be a lot of bacteria and stuff like that. So when something dies in the desert, it doesn't really break down. It just kind of dries out, okay, and blows away. All right, and temperate grasslands, I think we'll be able to get through this one. Okay, so the prairies is what we're looking at here, but look at this picture. Does that look like prairie? Does that look like grassland? Okay, temperate grasslands usually border on deserts, okay, so they can be pretty dry. That picture is taken in Empress, Alberta, which is about half an hour north of Medicine Hat. Okay, and it's pretty dry there. Okay, and we get there's cacti in this picture. Okay, cacti can grow in the grassland. Okay, there's different kinds of grasslands. There's short grass prairie, like down by Medicine Hat, and then there's mixed grass prairie. If you were up, let's say, St. Paul, Edmonton, that kind of area, that would be mixed grass to parkland. Okay, kind of a biome, right? Still all considered to be prairie, right? So they can vary quite a bit in terms of their structure, but they're super important for agriculture. Okay, they'll be packing up, guys. Still got a lot of time. All right, climate. All right, what have we noticed in here? Curve, yeah, okay, the grassland does not exist near the equator. That's savanna, that's different, okay? Temperate grasslands are gonna have a temperature curve, okay? And their precipitation is generally gonna follow the curve. The warmer months are gonna be the wetter months, okay? Yes, we get winter, yes, we get snow in the winter, but 10 centimeters of snow is 1 centimeter of rain. It doesn't represent a lot of moisture, okay? It takes up a lot of space, but it doesn't represent a lot of moisture. Okay, so typically that's the pattern that you're going to see for a temperate grassland. This is Calgary's. Okay, and you can see that in Calgary, and this has always been the case, June is our wettest month by far. Okay, we get way more precipitation in June than any other month. Okay, this here, again, same place. This is Empress in August. All right, so just north of Medicine Hat in August, and you can see it's just baked. Okay, that's the way the grassland gets in the summertime. All right, so these two pictures are taken within days of each other. Okay, north of Medicine Hat, north of Edmonton. Okay, about 2 or 3 days apart. Okay, quite a bit more green in this area because this is mixed grass prairie. This is short grass prairie. This gets blasted, okay, and gets very little precipitation after June. Okay, this gets pretty steady precipitation through June, July, August. Right, so it's going to have different species of grass, and it's going to stay active much longer. This stuff has gone dormant long ago. All right, so lots of different kinds there. Okay, soils all have in common thick A horizons, thick topsoils, because every year the grass dies, and that stuff gets cycled, and new grass grows up. It's not last year's grass that grows. Okay, it's new blades of grass that grow each year, so that builds up a lot of organic material and a thick topsoil. Okay. Animals. Here's my picture of all the animals that live in the prairie. Because most of the native animals to the prairie are gone. Okay, we've pretty much taken care of that. Okay, grizzly bears used to live on the prairie. Used to have grizzly bear, black bear, wolves, all that kind of stuff. But those are not convenient if you have livestock. So they have been systematically eliminated. Okay, another thing that was bad for our livestock was bison. Okay, prairies used to have herds of hundreds of thousands of bison roaming across them, but they ate all the grass, and that wasn't good for our livestock. So we got rid of them. Okay, All you had to do is run them off a cliff. True story. Okay, we'll finish talking about that tomorrow. I'm going to come around and spray your desks, so everybody mask up, grab a paper towel. Nick, you were here, right?
No, the one's this one. Yeah, well, you sprayed yesterday. Is it run? No, it's not. That fits into the bed, you know? I'll put deodorant on the little
Put deodorant on my feet. Yeah, that's the busiest one.
It works, don't worry.
Good boy.
Alexa, socks. You look sick. Socks. I couldn't help but wear your socks the entire time. Those are, hey guys, those are the stylish socks that I've ever seen. It's made for winter climbing, Scott. I got first sweatshirt and like you're kind of surfing. I mean, yeah.